Hi, and welcome to our next Your Story interview, where we're getting to know people in our church family better and hearing about how God has been working in their lives. And, as you watch these, I think you'll realize just how uniquely each of us have been created, but also how we all have this common thread running through our lives. We have triumph and tragedy, highs and lows, the good and the bad, and really how we all have this overwhelming need for a Savior. And aren't we so thankful that God has given us Jesus and also just continues to walk alongside us, meeting each of our needs throughout our lives. And, as you watch these interviews, I really hope that it leads you to think about your own story, how God's been working in your life and in the lives of the people around you. It really has made me think about my story, and it has me wondering about your story. Hello, and welcome to our Your Story interview. And as you can see, we have quite a few guests with us today. We have Ella Taylor and Nate Moyer and Landon Moyer, and they are actually going to be summer interns here at the church. So we thought it would be a good idea for you to get to know them better. You guys, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I know it's your favorite thing to share. So, why don't we just start off real quickly by giving us a brief introduction of yourselves. Ella, you could start.
Sure. My name is Ella. I'm the youth and children's intern. I've been around for a while, so you've probably seen me.
I have, once or twice.
Just once or twice.
It's funny because they're in the same family.
Yes.
Thanks,
I don't know if you guys got that.
And what's funny about that is we're the farthest distanced, even though we're in the same family. Do you want to say where you have gone to school or
Sure.
where you are
I'm in my junior year. I went to Concordia, and now I'm transferring to Portland State University because they've got the speech and language program that I want to go into.
Nice.
Yep.
Good.
Yes, my name is Nathan Moyer. I'm going to be the youth intern here this summer, and I'm also on the worship team. I'm also going to help out with the kids a little bit too. I am currently attending Biola University in La Mirada, California. I really only have like one semester left, and that one semester I'm just taking one class. So I'm basically like almost done.
Pretty much. Like wearing half of a graduation cap
so
right now.
I'm done. Because anyways.
He just has to braid the tassel.
My major is elementary ed. So whenever I have like interviews, like, why do you want to be in elementary ed? I always say, I really like working with kids, and I've worked with everyone from preschool all the way till 12th grade. So, like, this job is just, like, perfect for everything I want to do. So, yeah.
Great.
I am Landon. I am a sophomore at Westmont College down in Santa Barbara. Dramatic pause.
Oh, okay.
I had no clue.
I totally know what college I'm going to. I am studying data analytics and theater arts down there. And this summer I am the...
like two polar opposites.
Yeah, totally. I am the technology and media intern. I don't really know my official title, but I'm the guy who messes up all the camera shots on Sunday mornings. So
you mean you're the one that nails all the camera shots?
That's right.
Yes, thank you.
We're appreciative of your efforts. Okay, and so before we get started on the real stuff, inquiring minds want to know, you guys all seem to have the same hair color at this point.
Yeah, they all copied me.
They really did. Landon obviously is just coming natural, but is it a thing that interns here have to have?
So Landon is naturally that color. I was so I bleached my hair. I was planning on going blonde, just because I'd never done it before, and I'm the type of person that likes to change things often. So, I've just never bleached my hair. I want to see what happened, and because my hair is black naturally, and because it's so thick, it just ended up turning orange. And I bleached it twice, and it just became orange.
Well, you brothers have never looked more alike,
I know.
right?
Yeah, that's what my mom has been saying every day.
It's a mom thing.
Every morning.
Yeah, and you.
Ella just has quarantine hair.
Yeah, I fell victim to the quarantine boredom.
Yeah. So
It's
this
not
wasn't.
intentional.
This
Happy
wasn't.
You don't
accident.
have bangs.
It's true. Almost. Not quite, though. Not quite there yet.
Okay, well, we had to get that part out of the way, right? Just real quickly, tell us how long you've been coming to Jacksonville Press and what's your favorite thing about being part of this church family?
I have been coming here since the first grade, I think. I don't know how many years that is. I'll say 10.
It's 13, but
Okay,
who's
sure.
counting?
13 years. And I like how connected it is. I like that everyone knows everybody.
Nice.
Yeah.
You can answer this.
A little over 15 years we've been coming here. So, yeah,
Isn't? Yeah.
2005 to 2020.
All right.
And what do you like about being here?
I think for me, my favorite part is, I feel like I'm just repeating exactly what you said, but I really like the community. It feels like we're really connected through like care groups and all that stuff. And like whenever we have fellowship time during Sunday services, when we're still meeting together, like people just seem to congregate around one another, and there just like seems to be a really vibrant community here. We're very biblically sound. I feel like the sermons that are preached every week are just like right on. Whereas with like some other churches, sometimes I'm a little like, but I think that everything we do here is rooted in the Bible, and I really like that.
Great.
You know, we started coming here when we moved to Jacksonville. We loved the kids program that they had here, and obviously you guys loved it so much you're still in it.
That's right.
A decade later.
Can't escape.
But again, the community here is really, really special, and the effort that the church puts forward to connect with the younger generations, with our, stellar youth group and everything else that the church does. And again, what Nate said, the sermons being really grounded and consistent in their theology is helpful too.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, guys. So tell me a little bit about your faith journey so far and where you've really seen God just kind of show up and when your faith became your own.
That's a great question.
I thought so.
I grew up in a Christian family, and I obviously grew up coming to church, this one in particular, and I really feel like I have seen God working the most in the people that are in my life. I think that there's been lots of times in my life where I really need that kind of support, and I've really found it in the people that God put there, like my parents and youth pastors and even friends and family and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just repeating everything you say today, but we've grown up like our parents are Christians. We've grown up in a really like biblically centered, but
salvation by inheritance, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Grandchildren of God.
Yeah. That's a buzzword. Yeah, so like I've just always like grown up around church, always grown up around God, and honestly, like in high school, I was kind of surrounded by people who were more like it's not really your faith, it's your parents. It's like, why do you really believe that? Mm-hmm. And there were just like a ton of questions I had that I never really thought of before. I'm like, why do I believe this? And I like kind of went through a crisis of faith in high school, but the thing that brought me back was Dustin Thompson. Actually, he was the old youth director here, and we just like talked one evening, and I just like shared what was going on in my life, and he just had like some really like wise words, and he said like, I'm just gonna like work through like this with you, and that brought me back. And it wasn't just that; it was like a accumulation of things that the Lord had like put in my life, and like people that He had put in my life. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's a little bit of my faith journey, and here I am. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same as Nate. Grew up, Christian home, Christian parents. We both went to Christian schooling from like K through 12, basically. And it's funny, I also had a crisis of faith in high school. And it's interesting looking at, like, we both, went to a Christian high school. And, part of being there was one of the reasons that we had a crisis of faith. And it's really amazing that this church, and especially, again, for me, Dustin Thompson, the old youth director here, or youth director,
Mm-hmm.
not youth pastor, he's not ordained. The old youth director, Dustin Thompson, really was like a steady, ground for us as, we went through that. And especially for me, just having that sort of steadiness in the youth group. And then as I laid a sort of a foundation as I went off to my first year of college that, really allowed me to, ask the questions for myself about what I wanted my faith to be.
Yeah, I think as parents, a lot of us are thinking about this as we raise our kids and seeing the statistics of a lot of kids raised in Christian homes decide to turn away when they leave the home, and they just walk away from the faith. And as a parent, that's something that you are, is looming out there a little bit as a possibility, and it's something you're trying not to have happen to your kids. So all three of you are good examples of kids who were raised and then stayed with your faith, but I'm sure you have friends who have not made that same choice. So is there anything that you have seen in them that they maybe have not grasped, or that you'll use kind of as you work in youth ministry and Landon, just as you minister to people around you also, that you see as like maybe a red flashing warning kind of a thing? Or is there a common thread that you see through any of those friends? Or what's your response to that trend?
Yeah, I think the way I've seen it is kind of twofold. I think the first part is that if you've grown up in a Christian home, it's kind of one of those things of like kids wanting to rebel against their parents. Like rock music is dying because like your guys' generation is like really into rock music, and like my generation just doesn't want anything to do with that because it's like, oh, that's what my dad listens to. He grows.
It's exactly the same.
But like I think like the same is with Christianity. Sadly, is that like this is what my parents believe, but I want to be independent. I want to forge my own path, and like Christianity just kind of stands in the way of that sometimes. I think a second reason is because there's a lot of Christians out there who are not Christ-like, and who do not represent Christ in a good way. And that's not all Christians, but there are, like I was talking to Elle about this last night. The loudest voices tend to be heard, and unfortunately, the loudest voices are most of the time the ungodly type of Christians. And I feel like talking to some friends who have walked away from the faith, that was one of the main factors. Is I'm done with the church. I'm done with Christians and the way that they look at the world.
Yeah, I think to expand on what Nate said, a common thread that I see is people being unable to separate the works that Christians do in the name of Jesus from what Christians do that Jesus actually commands.
Yeah.
And sort of, not to say rules are bad, but like the over legalism that a lot of maybe like good meaning Christian schools or parents have is really a turnoff for young people growing up, as a lot of culture is pushing towards more of self-direction in terms of philosophy and faith, so that moves them away from maybe more institutionalized forms of religion and Christianity.
Yeah, the rebellion almost comes in the form of rebelling against the rules or the perception of what a Christian is, instead of really focusing on the who of it, the who Jesus is, and his example for us, instead of the earthly examples that we see, because we're all human and mess up, and then all of a sudden there's hypocrisy and things that are hard to jump over. But so would you say that focusing on Jesus and who he is and the gospel message of grace is really one of the key ways that you would maybe point somebody to stay the course instead of looking at people?
Yeah. I think something that I saw is that when I left to go to school and when I was looking for another church to be a part of, I found it really helpful that I knew what I was looking for. I had made going to church a habit, and it was something that I liked and that I wanted to pursue more. And I think that's something that pushes, or maybe people just don't realize, is when they go away to school, it's not at the forefront of their mind anymore because their parents aren't making them go, or their friends aren't going to youth group anymore. It's something that they have to forge out on their own. So if they don't have that foundation of wanting a church and being really connected in a church, then they don't really understand necessarily what they're missing until they've been gone from the church for however long.
Yeah, they've walked too far down the road
Yeah.
and been separated from it. That's a good point. So how do you see your role, for you two, how do you see your role as youth directors and also working in children's ministry, playing into helping build the kids' faith and the youth to lead them a direction that keeps them, solid in their faith and wanting to continue church?
I think one thing that I personally want to do is address tough questions that aren't always addressed in Christian circles. Because I feel like there's like a lot of things that we're kind of afraid to talk about for good reason, because they're tough topics. But I feel like when we don't address topics like this that are difficult, kids start to get their information, and like young adults start to get their information from sources that aren't from the church or aren't like godly sources. And I feel like that's kind of something that draws them away. And again, just like diving into the Bible, like diving into like this might be what this like heretical pastor says or something, but like what does the Bible say? And I think like those two things are just at the forefront of my mind with like tackling this issue.
Nice.
I'm not a youth minister. I don't think I answer that question.
It's all right. You can just say ditto.
I agree.
So even though the three of you are young and just thinking about where your paths will take you in life, you've each stepped out in different ways to be servants, right? And to find ways to plug into the church and maybe even step outside your comfort zone, even in this interview. So what has propelled you to do that? Or what makes you want to step out of your comfort zone and put yourself out there in this kind of a serving way?
Personally, both of my parents are really involved in the church, obviously. And so I have always just thought like it has always been really important in our family. And I think that as I grew up, I found that those kinds of issues and those being a servant to others and helping to minister to others is really important. And I thought it was the same. So I wanted to follow in those footsteps.
Yeah, and for me, sorry, there's like this weird like dynamic of like, but for
Just
me,
go down the line.
in a weird sort of way, I feel like I'm almost like I am stepping out of my comfort zone, but not as much as I feel like I should, because I definitely feel like worship and youth ministry are things that God's called me to, just because I feel like He's gifted me with certain traits and attributes that lend themselves well to those two things. And one song that I've been listening to a lot lately is this song called Available by Elevation Worship. And in the chorus, she just says, I say, yes, Lord, I'm available. And that's kind of the attitude that I want to have, is like, even though there's certain things that I am like nervous about, even though I'm stepping out of my comfort zone, I know that this is what God's called me to do, and I just want to step out in faith and say, yes, Lord, to what you've called me to do.
Nice.
Yeah, certainly to echo again what Nate said. I feel like I have a
I know, you get to go first next time.
We'll do a reverse.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of my gifting is, geared toward, the technology side of things, and, it's been great to help the church get up on its legs running with the streaming, and TJ has helped a ton with that. He's up there right now. You can't see him or hear him, but a lot of, what we've done has not really been out of my comfort zone per se, but a bit what has been the sort of, this is my first time, being like an intern and really being on like the staff here at the church, and just sort of learning how to, function in a small scale like office environment as we have here, has been sort of a stretch for me in terms of communication and everything else that goes along with that. And again, what Nate said about being available, part of the reason I enjoy serving and enjoy ministry is a lot of it hinges on flexibility and, when are you available? And one of my personal philosophies is I always try to be the most available that I can for everything. And that sort of does lend itself to, performance in ministry and volunteering. So I feel like that's very helpful.
Yeah. So you guys obviously all three have said that you grew up in Christian homes, but that doesn't mean that you have not had challenges or that life hasn't thrown you curveballs in different ways. Is there any time that in your life where you were going through something really hard, where God, you learned something new about God, or he became really personal to you in that particular situation? And if so, then how are you going to bring that into the ministry that you are each serving in? So basically, like, what's something hard that you've been through where you learned something about God, and that's something you want to...
Of course, this is the
Yeah, this is the one that you get to go first. Give them time to think about it.
I can go if you want to think more.
No. I will wing it.
You'll speak from the heart.
Yeah. I don't know if we want that. But, certainly one of the hard things for me was, going to college, starting my first year last fall at Westmont, I knew nobody.
Mm-hmm.
I had grown up in the same school, same church, for 10 years. And I had established, I sort of knew everybody who was there. And then now I get thrown into a situation where I don't know anybody. I'm naturally, if I'm in a place where I don't know people, I'm very quiet and reserved. So finding your space, finding the people you click with it was harder for me. And, I had to really work at, starting putting myself out there in, a good sense of that phrase in, finding people who I could be friends with and make deep connections with. And luckily, God placed in my life a really outgoing, fun, loving roommate who helped me.
Eccentric.
Yeah. Who helped me, get me out of my comfort zone. And, that's one of the reasons I'm, I said data analytics and theaters. That's one of the reasons I'm in theater, is because he pushed me to do something that I was afraid to do, but that I really wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the hardest things that I went through recently, I worked at, it was like a campus cafe. It's similar to like the Good Bean, if you've ever been to the Good Bean. We did like breakfast foods and coffee and like sweet drinks and desserts and stuff. It was fun. But I was promoted to manager, and at the time over the 2 semesters that I was serving as manager, I pretty much took 18 units like all throughout college, and I was working like 30 hours a week, and like to some people, like they can do that, like they're built for that, but I'm really not. I kept my grades up. I was able to do it. It was just really stressful, and I really didn't have that much time on top of homework and other stuff I was doing. And during that time, I really learned where my priorities lay. And especially, I went through a lot of stress during that time too, because one of my coworkers, and like actually a couple, like wronged me and like drug my name through dirt, and it was like really stressful. Anyways, that's a whole different story. Maybe ask me about it sometime. Sure. But anyways, like I was just like really stressed during that time, and it really showed me where my priorities were at. Like honestly, I kind of fell off with like Bible study and praying and stuff, because after I was done with homework, like that's normally when I would like go do that kind of stuff, but I was like tired. I was like play video games, watch Netflix, and that's kind of a side of my, like a spiritual side that I neglected for a while. And I was convicted by a friend, and he's like, where if you're not doing that stuff, where is God in your life? Like where have you placed God in your life? Like have you placed him below yourself? I was like, yeah, I have. And that was really convicting for me. And I've come to terms with the fact that, or I've come to the understanding that no matter like what I'm going through in my life, I really need to have God at like the top rung of like whatever I'm doing. And I really don't want to like neglect him because I do love him a lot. So.
So bringing that, holding someone accountable, you know, in godly love, that friend coming alongside you and asking that hard question of you is something obviously you can bring into the ministry with you. And then obviously putting God first when you're in ministry is
Kind of important.
very important, yeah.
I think just echoing what both Nate and Landon have said, in all the hard times that I've gone through, I really see God moving in the people that are in my life. And I feel, especially in high school when I was going through some rough things, I didn't really want to get comfort from God, I think. I just wasn't really open to it. Like I had closed myself off from that. And so he really was persistent in the people that he put into my life, in like my friends, and specifically Dustin Thompson, the youth pastor, just really speaking words of like hard truth and like encouraging an environment of like just being open and honest, even if you weren't in the best spot or if you weren't really feeling God move, that was okay. And that instead of taking that and letting that be like where you were at in your faith, pushing through it and not remaining stagnant. So I think that that's something that I think is really important, is letting kids know that it's okay if you are not doing good, and that if you feel like you need more help or you're not really seeing God move, like that's okay. It's not okay just to stay still, that you have to keep moving.
Yeah, and digging in. I really like that all three of you, that youth group and the church have come alongside you in those difficult times and in the faith, and that I really feel like that's probably a large part of the reason that you are willing to step in and serve in this way, is because it meant something to you. It made a difference to you, and now you're wanting to follow that example and help kids in our youth group in the same way, and that is an amazing example of God's goodness and how we can use God's goodness in our life and his example. And it's inspiring. And hopefully we're all doing that, right? We're taking those times in our life that were challenging and hard and using the model of how God worked through us to then work in other people's lives. I think it's really a cool thing. So thank you guys for being willing to do that and accepting that call, really. Is there anything else that any of you would like to tell us that you think that we should know about you, short of the next color that you're going to dye your hair? I don't know. that you'd like to share with us? I mean, if that's...
My favorite fast food place is McDonald's.
Okay,
Seriously?
thank you.
Yeah.
Inquiring minds
Why?
wanted to know.
We'll talk about this later.
Okay.
This is a pressing issue. I guess I'm just like really excited to step into this position, and I pray about every single one of you guys like on a daily basis. I pray for this church, so if that means anything to you. But I just like just to say like I do really like care about what goes on here. So and I'm gonna try my hardest to make this a good experience for the youth group. So.
Yeah. Right.
Ditto.
Well, ditto. We really appreciate you as a church family and as church staff that you've come on board with us this summer. We're so excited to work with each of you. You each bring fun, but also, I think, spiritual depth to our church family. And even though there's going to be a lot of laughter, we know, which is an amazing thing, there's also just going to be a lot of growth that happens. And so I'm really excited to see how you, number one, are part of that growth, and also how you help the people around you to grow also. So thank you so much for being willing to be our interns and for stepping up. And I cannot wait to see how God works in each of your lives. Do you have something?
I have one more thing.
Okay.
If you're watching this and you are have been watching our videos for a while, you should subscribe to our YouTube channel. We need to hit a certain amount of subscribers to get some like partnership programs so we can, start sharing the gospel with more people. So if you want to subscribe, please do it.
Yeah, even if it sounds like even
Like
if you
and
don't want to
subscribe.
subscribe, you should still do it. No. Okay. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you next time and find out who we are going to learn more about and maybe more about your story.